I want you to picture a scene. It's a dark, rain-slicked room in the city of Homs. Outside, the wind is just howling, but inside it's dead quiet. It's lit only by this faint, flickering flame of an oil lamp, and lying weakly beneath a blanket is an aging commander. His arms are completely covered in scars, there's a rusted sword resting nearby, and the silence in the room is just heavy. The men standing around him don't even dare to speak. See, this isn't just any old soldier. This is the man they called the Sword of Allah, Khalid ibn al-Walid. We are literally looking at the final moments of one of history's absolute greatest military minds. And today we're going to explore a really profound narrative about his life, his incredible internal transformation, and what martyrdom actually means.
It really begs a staggering question, right? How exactly does an undefeated warrior die? Just consider the sheer dramatic irony of his final moments. Here's a guy who faced down entire empires, who literally threw himself into the deadliest front lines you could possibly imagine. And yet, he's coughing up blood in a bed. When a young soldier in the room tries to hide his tears, Khalid just gives him this weak smile. And you know what he asks for? He asks his weeping soldiers to bring him his old black horse. Even when he can barely stand up, his mind is still right there on the battlefield. It's just a heartbreaking paradox, honestly. A man completely defined by war, being forced to face his end in the quiet stillness of a bedroom.
Section 1. A Legacy of Broken Swords, Exploring the Battle of Mu'tah. To really grasp the gravity of Khalid's final night, we've got to transport ourselves back into his memories. Imagine the explosive, dust-filled chaos of the desert battlefield at Mu'tah. It is a total nightmare scenario. Thousands of Roman soldiers are advancing, the noise is deafening, and absolute panic is spreading like wildfire through the Muslim ranks. The commanders have fallen, fear is completely taking over, and a flag just lies discarded in the dirt. This right here, this is the crucible where Khalid's legend was truly forged. Right in the middle of all that sheer terror, a powerful hand grabs the fallen flag. It's a young Khalid. He hops onto his horse, and with just pure kinetic energy, he screams out this battle cry, Allahu Akbar. It's one of those moments that completely shifts the momentum of everything. He ignites this roaring, massive cavalry charge. Swords are clashing violently, horses are thundering across the dirt, and the soldiers instantly rally behind his fearless advance. He wasn't just directing a battle from afar, he was physically pulling his entire army back from the brink of destruction through his own raw willpower. Which brings us to a frankly unbelievable statistic: 9. During that single battle at Mu'tah, 9 swords snapped in Khalid's hands. 9! Think about the physical toll of that, the relentless striking, the sheer force you would need to break 9 weapons in a single day. It paints a picture of a man who fought with an intensity that literally shattered steel. He was an absolute, unstoppable force of nature on that battlefield.
Okay, snapping back to the present day. Outside in the cold courtyard, Khalid is leaning against his old black horse. The young soldier, who is just completely in awe of these legendary stories of Mu'tah, asks Khalid if he ever actually feared death. And Khalid's response, it's incredibly revealing. He smiles faintly and says that, well, every man fears death, but a believer fears meeting Allah with nothing to offer. That is so powerful. Khalid's courage wasn't born because he lacked fear. It came from a much higher priority. He wasn't just trying to survive. He was trying to make sure that when he finally met his creator, his hands were absolutely full of sacrifices that he'd made for his faith. Section 2, the transformation and the peaceful conquest. We need to shift the narrative inward for a second to really explore his spiritual evolution, because Khalid wasn't always the sword of Allah. We journey back to the conquest of Mecca. But unlike the explosive violence of Mu'tah, this city stands totally silent. The Muslim armies enter peacefully. It's a bloodless conquest. And a young Khalid is walking slowly through the very same streets he once aggressively defended against Islam. Khalid approaches the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and he lowers his head. He's carrying this heavy, shameful burden of having fought against the Muslims for years. But instead of anger, he is met with this gentle, total paradigm-shifting reassurance. Islam erases what came before it. Talk about a reset. Those words brought Khalid to tears. It was a complete spiritual rebirth for him. From that moment on, his unparalleled energy for war was no longer fueled by tribal pride, but by a really profound, redeeming faith. Section 3, the search for martyrdom and a warrior's grief. We are brought right back to that freezing courtyard in Homs. The cold wind brushes Khalid's face, and a violent coughing fit forces him to reveal his deepest internal conflict to his men. And you realize this isn't just physical pain he's enduring. It is an immense, crushing psychological grief. He waves off his soldiers who rush forward to help him, and he slowly opens his shirt. The soldiers just stare in absolute shock. Khalid points weakly to himself and reveals that there is literally not a handspan on his body except that it carries wounds from battle. Every single inch of him is covered in scars. It's the stunning physical proof of his relentless search for martyrdom. In every single battle he fought, he threw himself into the absolute most dangerous positions, actively trying to trade his life for his faith. And then he delivers this massive emotional gut punch. With his voice breaking and tears forming, he says, "Yet here I am, dying in bed, like an old camel." Man, you can just feel the pure tragic irony hanging in that silence. This is the deep sorrow of a man who wanted absolutely nothing more than to die a martyr's death on the battlefield, falling under the clash of swords. To him, dying in a bed, it feels like a failure. It feels like he was denied the ultimate honor that he had been chasing his entire life. The whole courtyard just falls into complete silence. Section 4, the true meaning of victory and the divine lesson. In the middle of that wind-swept silence, an older companion steps forward. He sees the crushing weight of Khalid's grief, and he steps in to completely reframe this impending death. He asks Khalid one simple, profound question. Do you know why Allah kept you alive? Let's actually walk through this companion's logic together, because it changes absolutely everything. First, if Khalid had died in battle, people would have naturally assumed that the Muslims' victories came from Khalid's own tactical genius and strength. They would have tied the success of Islam directly to a man. But secondly, by ensuring Khalid survived every single wound, Allah wanted the Ummah, the whole community, to know that victory only comes from him. Khalid wasn't being denied martyrdom. He was being preserved as a theological lesson. He was kept alive so that humanity would look past the sword and look to the divine. And as those words hit him, you can see peace slowly enter Khalid's face. His tears slow down. He finally gets it. Section 5, the final surrender, the servant of Allah. The whole energy of the story lowers here to a really reverent, quiet pace. Khalid is taken back inside as the darkness outside just begins fading right before Fajr, the dawn prayer. He lies back in his bed, the oil lamp is burning super low, and he asks his soldiers for his sword, one last time. They place the rusted blade beside him, and he touches it so gently. He whispers, "I spent my life raising this for Islam. I pray Allah accepts it from me." A single tear rolls down his cheek. He looks upward, and with his weakening breath, he whispers his final shahada, the declaration of faith. The lamp flickers, silence completely fills the room, and the sword of Allah's hand falls still. Morning breaks over Homs. The beautiful call to prayer, the Adhan, is echoing through the city. Outside the house, these hardened, totally battle-tested soldiers are crying openly. One of them touches the old black horse standing alone, another is just staring at that rusted sword. It is such a striking visual reminder. The man who defeated armies could not defeat death. But even more importantly, it shows us that even the absolute greatest warrior was, in the very end, only a servant. So we'll wrap up with this final thought. Khalid ibn al-Walid remained completely undefeated in battle, but his greatest victory was his faith. It leaves us with so much to reflect on, doesn't it? True martyrdom and real triumph aren't just about how you die on a battlefield. They are found in pure, unwavering submission to a higher purpose. It's about that internal transformation that turns a fierce enemy into an unbroken servant. So what does true victory actually look like in your own life? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.